Welcome back, everybody. Time to preview the Mids and the East Carolina Pirates. Pete Medhurst alongside Joe Miller. Look, this Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium turf has been amazing. It's like Navy turns into some sort of imaginary football team when they go down there. The points have been plentiful for the Mids down in Greenville. I think 66 points a game might be tough to get to this week, Joe, but how does this team build on last week's momentum and try to move to 3-0 now in the American Athletic Conference?
Well, you're right. I mean, it's been a very good stadium as far as for recent success for the Mids down in East Carolina, and they've had a lot of success running the football there as well. The numbers are really amazing. But I think as far as trying to keep things going, I mean, that's been the buzzword this week when you've talked to the coaching staff or listened into what they've said is consistency. They want to see that from this team. And I think you go back to what we saw in the Temple game, and running the fullback, establishing the fullback is going to be their number one priority. And they got back to what they promised everybody last week in the lead up to the Temple game. They were going to be tough. They certainly were that against the Owls on Saturday, and established the interior running and attack. And I think that led to a lot of big plays offensively for them. And when I say big plays, I don't necessarily mean explosive plays, big 20, 25-yard chunk plays, but the third down conversions and getting it into third and manageable was a huge part of what constituted the victory for them last week. And I would throw that under the category of of big plays when you look at some of those fourth down conversions that were massive to maintain those drives and to establish an early lead. We talked about that as well last week. Get out to an early lead, set the tone, and they sort of followed that to a T last week against the Owls. And I think that's the similar game plan here against East Carolina. Get up early on them, dictate sort of the style of the game. But it's still going to be a tough game. I mean, it's not going to be an easy game down there. And I know that Navy fans are used to the Mids putting, I think, 76, 66, and 56 the last three times down there. Not in that order, but the last three times down there. It's hard to live up to those expectations again. But it's nice to go to a place where you've had a lot of success, that's for sure.
How important was it for them to do it the way they did last week, where basically Dalen threw two screen passes? Everything else was simply on the ground and kind of getting back to that philosophy of what Navy triple option football has been all about?
Well, I think it's important for a couple reasons. First, it's, the identity. So you reestablish that, and that's important. There's no doubt about that. You have a base that they can draw back from, and every football coach will talk about what we do best, and this is what we're going to if our backs are against the wall, this is what we're going to look to have success. And I think that's important. But I think the other thing is, after all the talk about diversifying the attack and throwing the football and trying to do different things, it was a showing of strength for their team. And I think more than anything, for that offensive line to get the game that they had under their belts is incredibly important, to be able to establish the run and get things going. But I look at big picture too. Now teams who may have thought, hey, they might throw it a little bit more, look at that game film last week and say, well, they might run the fullback 35 times like they did last week as well. So I think it helps in multiple ways, but I think the most important thing is you're drawing back on your strengths, and that's a key for this offense.
Defensive depth chart really stepped up last week. Guys like Derek Atwater, Terrell Adams, who ended up being the defensive player of the week in the American Athletic Conference. Thoughts on the way the defense performed? Because, again, they were the group that basically, that physicality part, took a little bit of a different meaning for them last week after what happened against Air Force with so many subs. Thought that group really gave a good account of itself against a very physical Temple team.
No doubt. I mean, to be losing as many starters as they were last week and to still come up with a victory and still come up with some big plays, I thought was huge. And, it goes back to, can you get stops in the red zone? And they were able to get a turnover. And the thing that I pointed to first and foremost last week was you needed to limit it, the explosive running plays, and they have to defend the run better. And I thought they did both those things well last week against Temple, and that was important. And then you get the red zone stop with the John Marshall interception, and of course on the biggest play of the game, Terrell Adams makes the stop on the 2-point conversion. you knew coming in because of Temple's offense and their skill positions at running back and wide receiver, they weren't going to shut them down completely. But it was about making 4 or 5 plays to win you a football game. And with the guys that they were missing, to be able to do that, I think is the key part of that. And to get yourself a win with those guys missing, and hopefully soon those guys will be back and can add some depth for an experience from what we saw from last week from the guys that stepped in for him. So I think it's a win-win. Anytime that you have that amount of losses on defense, and to be able to win the game, I think can really buoy you and really push you forward when those guys come back and you have that experience depth.
Kevin Brennan, of course, the only guy guaranteed to be back this week. He'll make the start this week after being suspended for the first half because of his targeting penalty against the Air Force. I want to touch on a guy, though, that you really pegged last week, and he really came up big. John Marshall, red zone interception, and a guy that, Joe, we see him flying all over the football field right now. And that's, defensive coordinators preach that. We want guys to run to the football. The local product out of Gonzaga seems to be getting more comfortable week after week in what Brian Newberry and them are asking him to do. And now he's starting to become a playmaker on that defensive side. You pegged him last week. What did you see from John that, brought that out? And obviously he made you look really good last week.
Well, I appreciate that. I see a player that has playmaking ability on the defensive side of the football field. And I think what I looked at of what Temple, what they did is that he was going to put himself in position to make some plays. They throw a lot of stuff on the line of scrimmage. So, they challenge some guys around the line of scrimmage. It's not as much, it's more side to side than vertical than what they do. So I just thought he was going to be in position to have the ability to make a lot of plays because he plays a ton at the line of scrimmage. And I think he's still developing as a player. I think he's still, as the coaching staff has talked about, has a ton of potential. But he still has to. He's played a couple different positions. So I just think that he's emerging more than anything as a playmaker on the defensive side of the football field. And what we've seen in the past with this defense, going back to last year, is you need some playmakers. And I just thought that he has the type of skill and the speed that they're looking for to make some plays on the defensive side of the football field. And I thought it was a good matchup for him last week because of what Temple does offensively. He was able to make some plays last week. Not the only one, the defensive side of the football field, multiple playmakers last week, but his interception of Russo, I think came at a vital point in the contest and gave them some momentum going into the second half. And I think, that helped them win that football game.
That's Joe Miller. Keith Mills joins Joe, myself, obviously Scott Wyckoff at our network studios. Kickoff is set for 12 o'clock. Remember, the game visually moved from ESPN Plus to now ESPN2 as well. So if you haven't subscribed, you don't have to, at least for right now. You can catch the game on ESPN2. And as always, we encourage you to turn down the TV sound and join us on the WBAL Navy Radio Network. Kickoff set for 12 noon tomorrow. We're on the air at 11:05. Enjoy the game, everybody.